EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, Birds fans. It's scheduled release day, May 15th, a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mack, happy scheduled release day to you, sir. How you doing?
Yeah, big day. Yeah, I joked. It's the only day where 32 different fan bases are united for one brief moment in the belief the league hates them. It's actually quite beautiful.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. The strength of schedule came out, and the Eagles are pretty low on the list. They have the easiest strength of schedule in the NFC East, pretty far down there.
Yeah, not a big fan of strength of schedule.
Yeah, me neither. Teams change.
There's advanced ones. Warren Sharp does a good one that takes into account all the outliers. But, we know. I mean, last year when you go through this process, perfect example, the Jets, looked like a really tough game. Ironically, the Eagles lost to the Jets. I expected that to be their first loss. Ironically, it was, but not for the reason it turned out. And one fell swoop in a team that looked like a significant Super Bowl contenders, one of the worst teams in the NFL. So, and there's worst to first every year in the NFL. So just looking at last year's records and doing a strength of schedule, and that's most of those basic things, that's not going to give you a lot of information other than maybe some teams had some, maybe they're bad. You got to look at each individual team. Maybe they had injuries and maybe it was an outlier season. Maybe they lost their quarterbacks and all of a sudden it becomes irrelevant. So, be very careful of those things.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about, which I think is a good point, and you see it with the Chiefs, who are starting off with two tough opponents. He's Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, and then Joe Burrow. They start off with the Ravens and the Bengals. Do you think the NFL is going to be front-loading a lot of those high-profile quarterback matchups? Cilio brought this up yesterday in the National Football Show because you saw some of the games down the stretch, which were supposed to feature these great quarterbacks and these great teams, and injuries just, they take a toll on the players over the time. So I wonder if they start to front-load some of that, and you certainly see that with the Chiefs schedule. It'd be interesting to see how they do the rest of them.
Well, it's mainly the issues they have are with television. As I always say, the most important people in professional sports are basically unknown people who sign the checks at these companies that broadcast the games, and they want a certain something. Certainly. So, early in the season, I think it's more about they want to take advantage of all the hype, and obviously everybody's excited early in the season. So you always have almost always have a big matchup on, the first game, the first Thursday night game.
Right.
And generally reigning Super Bowl champions, generally a rematch. Last year was Detroit, and I was surprised by that. Now, it turned out that Detroit was a really good team, which I wasn't surprised by, but didn't have the hype. So it's not 100%, but basically, and that's the reason why the schedule takes longer now. It's about a month back than it used to be, because they have to satisfy everybody. And on the back end of it, they have a very difficult job, the schedule makers. On the back end of it, they keep adding broadcast partners because people keep willing to pay exorbitant amount of money. But what they don't want to pay, especially if you use Christmas, which is going to be Netflix games, that's late in the season. Well, Netflix doesn't want to pay a big one-off for a couple games to watch a couple 4-win teams. Right. So it's really it's a really difficult job. And those guys who do it generally do a pretty good job. But like I said, you're going to see, and I already got it when I tweeted that out as a little bit of a joke and already fit. Yeah, but they did screw us. They don't care about your team. They care about who's paying the bills. And
they're trying to please the masters, and the amount of masters keeps going up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Let's take a look real quick before I do this. I want to look at the 2024 opponents. Obviously, we're going to see when they play who here, but home games are Cowboys, Giants, Washington, Browns, Falcons, Panthers, Jaguars, Packers, and Steelers. And then obviously the Packers is the Brazil game, so not really a home game there. They're playing in Brazil as the home team. And then away, you got Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, Buccaneers, Rams, Ravens, Bengals, Saints. So I think actually the away opponents aren't so bad. They're going down to Tampa, where they haven't been great recently. Lost two of the last 3 years in the playoffs down there, or last 4 years. But and then Ravens and Bengals is a tough, two tough away games. And then the home games, I think they. You're right about that Packers game. That's tough that they took that out of the link and they put that in Brazil. I mean, that would have been a nice game to play at home versus a tough NFC foe. But that's your look at the Eagles' opponents. So we'll see where and when they play each of those teams tonight. Johnny Mac, any of those opponents stick out to you? Anything you're looking before we know when they play them?
It's just like I tend to look for themes, and I got a tough division, this year with the AFC North, with 3 really good teams, and Cincinnati getting Joe Burrow back, obviously.
Right, playing the entire AFC North.
Yeah, Baltimore's got a really good team. Cleveland's got a really good team. And our old buddy Jim Swartz will be back. Rodney McLeod for his last season. And then Pittsburgh's Pittsburgh, and they might be the weakest team in the division. When Pittsburgh's the weakest team in the division, you got a good division because Mike Tomlin keeps going. He's never had a losing season, so they're not going to be terrible. So, yeah.
No, I actually think Pittsburgh has a chance to be decent this year. I think if anybody's going to get something out of Russell Wilson, if everybody thinks he's done, I think it's Pittsburgh. I think they could be a competent team with him at quarterback. So we'll see. That could be a tough game.
Yeah, well, they're always competent. That's what I'm saying. I have no.
But I mean, for people who wrote off Russell Wilson because he sucked in Denver.
Yeah,
I think
I mean, I'm not in love with that decision, but they're going to find a way because they always find a way. It might be defensively. I don't think Justin Fields is going to do anything at this point either. So they do have some issues at the most important position. But bottom line is, I'd have to look up how many years it is, but it's up at 17, 18 with Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. So I don't expect that team to win 4 games is what I'm trying to say.
No, yeah, I don't either.
That's not, even though it's a really difficult division and they're going to have a difficult time competing in that division. I still think they're not going to be a walkover. And generally there are some last place teams that are walkovers. So they're not going to be one of them is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, a couple.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 17 consecutive seasons have never been underwater over those 17 seasons with Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, the Justin Fields stuff is interesting. You did the show for 3+ years with Jody Mack. That might have been the one thing that stands above all that Jody was wrong on was Justin. Well, we'll see. I mean, I guess his career is not over yet, but Jody loved Justin Fields coming out of college. He thought he was a great player. Hasn't quite panned out, but he also was in Chicago, where they aren't a great organization. So
they don't have a great history of developing.
Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now.
Yeah, now Caleb Williams is in that situation. So
at least they got him weapons, though. They got some weapons up there now.
They do, but everybody who thinks he's a slam dunk, I would wait a little bit to see because they just. And probably the one thing that stands out, because I like Justin Fields coming out, not as much as Jody, but I thought he had a chance coming out. And they ruined him. I mean, it's a bad ecosystem, defensive head coach, crappy offensive coordinator. Now they've changed.
Yeah. Did you see the report he was fighting with Nick Foles up there too?
Yeah, I did see that. And that's what you never know when we're all sitting here talking about the draft. You never know what people are going to do behind the scenes. We don't have that type of information. Do they have the drive to succeed? We're going to talk about Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, and that's one of my things. I mean, if you would have told me in 2017 that it would be Jared Goff getting that contract and not Carson Wentz, I would have laughed in your face. One guy just, I don't want to say stopped, but thought he had it solved. And the other guy, fought through the struggles and kept getting better and kept getting better. The minute you look up in the rearview mirror in this league, you're caught. So you got to keep working and evolving. That's what we got to worry about to a certain degree with Jalen Hurts from the perspective of, did he get caught or is it just a bad season? And you'll be able to see, and that's a bad term. He didn't have a bad season. But you'll be able to see pretty quickly if he's made adjustments to the adjustments made to him when they start playing this season.
Johnny Mac and I are going to do an offense segment in between our two guests. So we have two guests today. We have Mike Gill in hour one, and then we have BLG, Brandon Lee Gowton, in hour number two. And then in between that, we talked a lot of defense the last 2 days. So Johnny Mac and I will talk Jalen Hurts. We'll talk the offense. We'll talk expectations for that offense. Baldy said something very interesting. He was on Dan Silio's show yesterday. Brian Baldinger said something interesting about Jalen Hurts, and I want to run that by you, Johnny Mac. So we'll talk about that. But you just brought up the contract with Jared Goff. Let's talk NFL news real quick. We haven't talked much NFL news. Nothing new in Eagle land for anybody that's waiting to hear about Eagles news. Nothing new yesterday. So other than the schedule coming out tonight, which we'll talk about tomorrow, and we'll do our win-loss predictions as we go win-win, loss, win-win, and see where we end up. But Johnny Mac, 4 years, $212 million for Jared Goff, $53 million a year. What a contract for him. And you kind of briefed on it already, but Jared Goff picked one selection before Carson Wentz. He's laughing all the way to the bank right now, and Carson Wentz is a backup.
Yeah, amazing turn, because obviously things didn't turn out well. I mean, you think about Jared Goff, and that was the 2016 draft. And I think he didn't win a game as a rookie. He didn't start the whole season, but he didn't win a game as a rookie. And that was sort of the death knell of Jeff Fisher. And then he gets with Sean McVay, and things start to turn around for him because Sean, again, when we talk about ecosystem, that's a good ecosystem. But also, even though they had success on the field, he had success numbers wise. Sean McVay didn't believe in him to be that guy to get him over the hump. So there was something missing. Obviously, he goes to Detroit. Same type of thing when he started with the Rams. He was 0-8 or something like that to start the season. Just looked like a disaster. But he himself was playing pretty well. If people looked over the fact that Detroit had a bad supporting cast, all of a sudden some of their draft picks start to hit, and they're a really good team, and he's a really good quarterback. You wake up one day and say, and we were just talking about it with guys, Justin Fields. You never know, who's the one behind the scenes doing everything to be successful, doing everything to be evolved, constantly getting better, constantly doing. And I told you off air about Dante Culpepper. Was probably because that was one of the most 180 drastic turnarounds ever. And the season, and I can tell you right off the bat, it was the 2004 season, and it was one of the best seasons, quite honestly, in NFL history for any quarterback. That's how good it was. At the time, he broke Dan Marino's record for passing and total yards and rushing yards. Obviously, he was a mobile quarterback, but he had 4,717 passing yards, 39 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He could run the ball. It was at the time, it was one of the great seasons in NFL history. His passer rating was 110.9, and he came back the next season, and it was like a bomb went off. And he said the game has slowed down for him, and he made a Star Wars comparison. Said, I feel like a Jedi Knight. And I said, oof. And then the next season, his first 2 games, no touchdowns, 8 interceptions, tore his ACL. Basically, his career was over. I mean, he played, but, he wasn't good. And, he struggled to come back. He went to Miami. He went to Oakland. He finished in Detroit. He did nothing
Right.
The rest of his career after that one season. The minute you think you have this game solved, I'll go back to Roddy Piper for the wrestling fans. I see Mike Gill in there. The minute you think you've got the answers, they change the questions. And if you stop, you're done. And you don't know the guys like Jared Goff who are grinding behind the scenes, consistently get better. And I bring up Carson. I'm sorry, but Carson went out to Los Angeles to work with Tom House and Adam Dadew. And that's when he had his big season, and then he just stopped. Whether it was for the pandemic or whatever. Along with the injuries, same thing with Dante, torn ACL, torn LCL. Those contributed, the concussion, all that contributed. But I think he thought he figured it out. I think that's a big part of it. And the minute you think that, you're in trouble.
Jared Goff, big contract for him. I give him a lot of credit, though. I mean, it was a good story from you right there about Dante Culpepper. But Jared Goff's been working. Carson Wentz was not. Carson Wentz is a backup. Maybe it caught up to him too quick. We'll get to our first commercial break. We got Mike Gill coming up next on the other side. I want to say good morning to everybody in the chat, SMD, Twiz, Tyler, James, Daz. We appreciate you guys all being here. Barbara Carroll, all of our loyal listeners. We appreciate you all. Drop us a like in the show. Let's get over 100 likes today on the show. Coming up next, Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore does a great job on 97.3 with the Sports Bash 2 to 6 every single day. So we'll talk to Mike Gill next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
the greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. A Wednesday edition of Birds 365, a schedule release day edition. Joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
Morning, fellas. What's going on?
Michael, how excited are you?
Got my Eagles mug. That's how excited I am.
Yeah,
my Eagles mug. I'm so excited.
Logistics, very exciting stuff.
I, for one, I do like the schedule release for a couple of reasons. I mean, some of it are work related. I told my girlfriend she wants to go on vacation in the fall. I said I need to wait for the Eagles schedule to come out and check the bye week. Maybe I'll take off when the Eagles have a bye. But yeah, I think people get excited about planning their trip. You start to plan ahead for a fall vacation, and it's built around where the Eagles going to be. They have an interesting road schedule this year. You got chances to go to LA, Tampa, New Orleans, places that are a little warmer. So you're always trying to find out so that people can plan. If the game's in December when it's a little cold here, I'd like to go to Tampa. So I get it. I'm on board. The thing is, the sizzle of it lasts, for only so long. I mean, it comes out tonight. By the next day, you're kind of gone over it, Friday. And then, the one thing that's interesting, last night, Caitlin Clark played WNBA. She played in the national championship like a month ago.
Yeah.
And a month later, they've got the right formula if you can sustain that. You get the girls in the final game and then on the court a month later. You're waiting 6 months to see these guys drafted. You forget about who's where and when. So, yeah, the schedule's great. It comes out. It helps a lot of fans plan their trip, but it's still a ways off before you get to actually see all this happen.
Yeah, but I would argue that's to the NFL's advantage over your example, because part of the reason the NFL is the scarcity of it. Everything else is the Phillies are playing again, and if they're not, they're playing the next day. There's 162 of them, 82 in basketball, on and on and on. There's too much of that to the point where now people are saying, well, the regular season doesn't mean anything. Then you go to the playoffs, and the NFL, they all mean something. And I've been saying this all week, Mike. The only thing we know for sure right now is week 1, 8:15, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Eagles, Packers. That's the worst possible result for the Eagles to give up that home game for the reason, and I say that knowing a division rival, Dallas, is not going to be there. That they're not going to move that game. So when you factor in the games that could have been moved, Green Bay is probably the worst, because you're going to be fighting that team for potential playoff seeding. It's a very good team. If everything goes correctly for both teams, there's not tons of injuries. They're both going to be in it. And you're giving up a home game.
This is similar to when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and they played Atlanta in the wild card game. The next year they opened with Atlanta, and it was like that week 1 game could be for home field advantage, because you figured Atlanta would be right there with you. Now, they ended up not having a very good year, but Philadelphia is now Atlanta. Green Bay is similar to where Philadelphia was, where they were, a couple plays away from potentially being a Super Bowl team. So it's a huge game. I actually, you look at that and you lose that home game, you have to play in Sao Paulo. I don't know. Is Green Bay going to travel as much as the Eagles? I would imagine the place is going to be packed with Eagles fans. Is Green Bay going to travel over there?
Green Bay is a traveling team, man.
Yeah,
I know, but man, that's a trip from Green Bay to Brazil. That's a long one, man.
If you ask me who travels better than the Eagles, it's a very short list.
Right.
And Green Bay's on it. Although I don't know, it's similar to Dallas. I don't put Dallas ahead of the Eagles because Dallas fans tend to be all over. It's not necessarily traveling. You got these weirdos who glom on to America's team from back in the day. So they have clusters of fans throughout the country. Green Bay's a little bit like that from the perspective. It's an interesting team because obviously it's a small market, but they have this weird sort of national following that developed. But let's be honest. I mean, they've had Hall of Fame quarterback play for 30 consecutive years. So people like good teams. They were always good, and people grew up with that. And then now they have a bunch of fans.
I got to imagine, though, that the Eagles fans are going to.
They're going to show out. They're going to show out. I'm sure they're going to show out.
There's going to be. That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm. If you say who's going to have more fans, I'm going to say Green Bay.
I'm not. Wow. So I'm not discounting Green Bay. I know what you're saying. They do have a following, but man, I mean, there's like 7 Eagles travel groups. I mean, I can't, is there 7 Green Bay Packer travel groups packing planes up to bring to Brazil? I mean, I don't know, man. It's a 12-hour jaunt from here to Brazil. I mean,
yeah, it's a very difficult trip. Well, I think it's going to be very difficult for Eagles fans as well.
I think it's a 9:15 p.m. game too. It's 9:15,
8:15
local time,
Eastern time. Yeah, they're an hour ahead of us.
Yeah. It's 9:15 down there.
Yeah.
Well, that's nothing. The time game there won't affect the travel there. I've looked into it. We've actually talked about going. It's a long ordeal. And then to come back, the travel time, the time difference is only an hour. It's only an hour ahead. So the time difference is not a big problem. It's a length of the travel.
Yeah.
Is a long travel day for just a 1 hour time difference.
Well, hey, it's not good for fans. It's not good for fans from the perspective of it's going to be very expensive for them. It's going to be long travel. You're giving up a home game against a good opponent. In no way is it good for the Philadelphia Eagles. In no way.
When does the team travel down there, John?
They haven't decided yet, but all indications are they're going in for the game and out. They're not.
Normally, there's like a media tour. The team goes.
Yeah, they used to do that a lot. You used to have to, when you had a London game, when they first started the London games, you used to have to go for the whole week. And I
would imagine they're going to have to do the whole media and everything. It's going to be a deal. And that's why I said, I know there's a lot of murmurs about the Eagles week 2 being on Monday night. It does make sense because the Phillies have a home game on Sunday and they're on the road on Monday. So you would think that they don't want the conflict with the home game. So the Eagles get to come home and possibly play on, I think week 2 would be yesterday I did a prediction of where every game will fall. I have 7 1 o'clock games, which you only had 3.
That ain't happening.
Well, listen, you had 3 last year. I think you got 7 this year, 4 at 4 o'clock, 2 on Monday, 2 on Sunday night, and
I
1
hope
on
you're right. I pray you're right.
1 on Thursday. I think week 2, I'm predicting week 2 will be Eagles, Jaguars, Monday night, Jason Kelce, the sit down with Doug Peterson, rehashing the Super Bowl.
That's not a bad thought.
That's your Monday night football.
Yeah, I thought the Jaguars game was at the end, though. No? Didn't they already put that out there, the Eagles?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen
I'm on the Eagles website. Who are the Eagles' 24 opponents? It says the 17th game will be against former head coach Doug Peterson.
No, that just means
that's just opponent.
Interconference opponent, the 17th game. Because they,
I had Baltimore and Jacksonville as your 2 Monday nighters, Dallas and Cincinnati as your 2 Sunday nighters. You're going to get Washington on Thursday night and 7 1 o'clock. So it's going to be a good schedule this year. That's my prediction.
Well, you're definitely getting Dallas on Sunday night.
No question.
One of the 2 games. So that's good. That's certainly a good prediction. They're going to have a lot of night games, primetime games, because they draw, and they're a good team. 1 o'clock games, which I want every week. all 18 weeks.
Kevin would be
ain't gonna
great
happen.
for us working in the,
Yeah.
covering the team.
Last year was brutal. They had
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
1 o'clock
Yeah.
games last year. That's it.
And remember, flex scheduling now is more liberal as well. So even this stuff is not locked in.
Yeah, they got the flex last year against Seattle. They went from the Sunday, what was it, a 4:25 to Monday night, the Seattle game last year. They ended up playing on Monday night 5 times last year with that flex, and then the playoff game.
Season schedule was brutal.
Well, going to Colin Thompson had told me before, like the players, they like playing on Monday night, but doing it too much, like it does kind of like mess up their routines and their schedules.
Yeah.
And he was telling like the stories about how, when you go to play Monday night, let's say he played in Carolina and you might have to play at Seattle or a different time zone. When you get back, you're getting back in like the middle of the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, you're thrown off for like the whole week, with your routines and your times. He's like, so teams that play a lot of primetime games have to try to adjust to that. And that plays a role, he thinks, like, the way the schedule comes out, how many prime times, how many times you're playing, not at Sunday at 1 o'clock when you're used to. The Eagles only played 3 1 o'clock games last year, and you wonder how much that ended up affecting them.
I think it's a sleeper at the start of the season, too. If they start in Brazil, it's a late game in Brazil. They got to travel back. And then, Jeff, I don't know if it's not guaranteed yet, but if that week 2 is a Monday night game, which Jeff Kerr kind of insinuated they have a little bit of a layoff, they're not going to be able to get into that schedule, Mike, that you talked about really until week 3 or maybe even after week 3.
Oh, yeah. And I say 7 1 o'clock games, mainly because you have a lot of games against teams, like because they're playing the NFC South. There's not like marquee teams, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta, and Carolina. I mean, Carolina, you would have to almost assume is a 1 o'clock. Yeah. Atlanta's not a big draw. Tampa's kind of meh. And same with New Orleans. So you look at those games, playing that division. Now, the other division that you're playing, the AFC North, which has Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, that's 4 opportunities. All 4 of those could be primetime games where I think Pittsburgh will be a 4:25 game. But Cincinnati and Baltimore certainly could be a primetime. I think Cleveland is an interesting one because they're kind of an interesting team, not the biggest market, but has a pretty good following. The division playing the NFC South this year, though, I think sets you up for more 1 o'clock game. And then I think you'll get Washington probably at 1 o'clock, and the 2 giant games you probably might get at 1 o'clock unless I said Amazon Prime might say, hey, can you throw us an NFC East game? All right, you get Philadelphia, Washington, the one that is like the lowest of the group. That's your NFC. But Prime, they're getting that game, Bills, Dolphins, to start their year off. So you can kind of see how they're, giving them a division game.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I joked this morning on social media that this is the time of year where all 32 fan bases unite. It's a beautiful moment because they all think they get screwed by the league. The league doesn't care about anybody. What they care about is satisfying their TV partners. And
I will tell you one other thing.
TV partners, Mike.
You're right about that, John. But one other nugget on that, too, is to keep in mind. The NFL, like you get to put your request in. You can put like, hey, we want week 11 as our bye. And they don't have to honor it, but you can put that in. You can put you got to put like your dates in that have conflicts. Hey, there's a concert at our stadium. The NFL has to be cognizant that the Phillies might be in the World Series in October or playoff baseball. So the Eagles could have some road games. Like you might see a 3-week in a row road trip. It's somewhere in there because of that.
People don't understand it. It might be a Taylor Swift concert somewhere. It might be something else. It might be they have all these issues they have to deal with. And yes, playoff baseball is a potential one in Philadelphia.
I did the research on September. The Phillies have 1 Sunday home game during the NFL season, but it's week 2. That Monday night they're on the road. So that's why I think a lot of people are looking at that Monday night as a home Monday night football
plus they
game.
Want to give them the extra, but that trip is tough, as we said. So, and that's an indication where they will try to probably help the Eagles, if anything. But Eagles are in demand. It's better to be in demand than not
All
in
right,
demand.
let me ask you
look at it
guys
that
and the
way.
people watching. I am out this year on the Christmas Day and the Thanksgiving. I'm over the holiday games. I want no more holiday games.
I'm definitely out on Christmas on a Wednesday.
I've been out
give me
on
a
them. But
break.
part of me wonders if I'm just being selfish because I don't want to cover the damn game on Christmas Day.
Listen, even if I just like last year, we're at my cousin's house and the game's on. It's a lousy game, the Giants, but like no one's paying attention. You get 17 of these. I want to be able to be in it. I want to be able to watch it and pay it. I can't pay attention. I'm trying to take notes. My uncle's talking to me. My aunt's asking me questions. I'm done with the holiday games. I don't mind the NFL putting games on and they're on in the background. Oh, what's the score? Okay. I don't want the Eagles on the prime time holidays anymore. Black Friday, no, thank you.
Yeah. Black Friday. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. People keep lining up because TV as a whole is declining rapidly. Cable is getting destroyed on a monthly basis, losing customers. The only thing that holds up is NFL football. So everybody's getting in line. And now you have Netflix to deal with.
Well, and then they took the Saturday. So if you are playing on Christmas Day, you will also play Saturday the 21st. So the 4 teams on Christmas are also playing Saturday the 21st. So you would have a Saturday game followed by a Christmas Day Wednesday game.
So that's why, look, I agree with you when you bring up the difficulty of playing, and Colin brought up from a player's perspective, the difficulty of playing night game, day game, going back and forth. You can't get that structure. One thing about the NFL, you have that week, a normal week, which is becoming less and less normal for the Eagles. Wednesday's a big practice. Then you got Thursday, then you got the Friday. Well, you have that consistency, and that's good for the team. And then it gets jumbled all over the place. But guess what? It's not changing. Every good team has to deal with that, because they're all going through the same thing, and they all are going to be on national TV a lot. The Cowboys have been going through it for years and years and years. Got to deal with it or don't deal with it, but you can't use it as an excuse. I will say that.
No, yep. Look, there's a handful of marquee teams that draw Philadelphia, the NFC East. I mean, if you're in that NFC East, you're getting those games. Even if you're the Giants in Washington, you're going to get some primetime games just because your market, the draw you are. You mentioned Green Bay. Pittsburgh's kind of another one in there. That's why that Pittsburgh-Philly game, I think CBS will probably try to grab that game and put it on at 425. Dallas is another one. The Raiders kind of used to be there. I don't know. Are they still in that kind of window? You see Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. I would imagine they've already got a London game. They've got the first Monday night game.
The international games are out. I should have mentioned that.
Yes, the international games are official. The London, the Munich, the Brazil.
Actually, a good week 1 game for the Jets. They're playing the 49ers in San Francisco on a Monday night. That's going to be a big start.
Aaron Rodgers and going back,
Well, and Jeff Kerr was on with me yesterday, and he tweeted this out, which made me think about having him to talk about it. Is there's a stretch where the NFL has a game on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, it's like almost every day of the week. And, I don't know that anybody thinks it's going to be overkill and how much is too much. But, man, you get to a point where there's a game on every single day almost. You wonder how much the NFL thinks they're going to get away with. And we talked about the international games. When they go to 18 games, which is going to happen, I would imagine you're going to have an international game the entire schedule. Every week you might have a game, and there's a different game over there with the 2 buys. It makes it a lot easier to get teams to go over there and play when you have 2 buys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, we all talk from a working perspective, and for people that have to work the game, it's certainly better at 1:00. But if your favorite team has a bunch of 1:00 games, that's not a good sign for your team.
Yeah, it means your team sucks.
They don't
pretty much
your team. So it's a catch-22, but
it's where we are. Real quick to the holiday point, Mike. When you're an Eagle fan, forget us covering the team. When you're an Eagle fan, every week is a holiday when the Eagles play. You get your buffalo chicken dip, you get your drinks, you get the couch set up. When it's holidays, like you said, you got your aunt, your uncles talking to you, everybody. There's noise in the house. I
Well,
agree. Now,
and I would
they
have
at
to
least have
imagine.
cash registers going. But
I would have to imagine that. Look, when the Eagles play, it's a boost to the local community and the economy. I mean, you go out, you get pizza, you get wings, you go to the bar. On Thanksgiving, you're not doing that. You're making Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas. Most likely, the economy doesn't get that boost, that jolt when your team is playing on that day because you're at home cooking dinner with people. So I think that the business owners probably aren't huge fans. I know I do my show through the football season. I'm on the road twice a week at 2 different locations. And I always ask them about the holidays. They're like, no, we don't want to be on the holidays. Now, both of them are at the casino. So the casino's open, but they're not getting nearly the same traffic to watch those games on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day as they would if the Eagles played on a normal day. So the Eagles run the roost, but because they run the roost, the NFL wants them in the highest profile games. So I'm wondering if they're going to be stuck on a Christmas again, which means, as I said, if they play Christmas, they're also playing Saturday. And there's nothing I hate more than Saturday NFL games. They just don't feel the same. They don't have the same intensity.
Well, Wednesday certainly doesn't feel the same. Not that I the whole thing. But it's not changing.
So. No, it's not. And I'll listen, they put the Black Friday game in last year, which, okay, Black Friday, give me a game. I'm cool with that. Where are they going to find another day where they can stick a game in so that Netflix can get a game and Apple TV Plus can get a game and Hulu can get a game and Peacock can get – I mean, where are they going to stick another random day where they can start owning that?
Yeah. Well, I don't like Thursday
what is
football.
The day? Like high school football ends. Are they going to do the Friday night, game of the week for the last month of the season when high school? Because they don't play Fridays because of high school. The only Friday game is this Eagle game, and they're saying that's because it's before and it's late enough at night. They're saying that they're kind of past the high school threshold. But that rule, there's a law in place that they can't play on Friday night.
And you talked about the Saturday games, and the NFL has deferred to college football, obviously, for years, and they wait until the college football season pauses between the end of the regular season and the bowl games, and then they play on Saturdays. Hey, guess what? They said they were going to play on Christmas Day on a Wednesday, and they used to pay deference to the NBA, and they no longer do that.
Well,
if the checks get big enough,
right?
Yeah,
they'll
put high school football right out of business. They don't care.
Yeah.
Well, the high school football thing, but I could see it like high school football. I know I'm in Jersey, so they don't really even play up to Thanksgiving anymore.
Yeah, they have short season.
That's pretty much they've shortened the season. You have playoffs after Thanksgiving, but the Friday night every week ends right around Thanksgiving. So you can say from post-Thanksgiving on, they could do a Friday night package, like a Friday night game of the week for like the whole month of December. They could possibly add that to their schedule. That could be the next, hey, where can we get another window so we can get a package for Apple TV Plus Friday nights into December? You want 4 Friday night games? Actually, there's a game into January now. So you can get probably 5 Friday night games if you really wanted to and put a whole package together for one of these streaming services. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a network out there that said, you're going to give us 5 games on Friday night? We'll take it.
Yeah, and I think they're starting to combine some of these companies. Like I saw something.
Yeah,
like Netflix.
Yeah, they're doing
Apple
Apple TV Plus, and Peacock, I think, are bundling together as the answer to Hulu. I lost track, but I
and that all depends, because Comcast is behind that bundle, which is supposed to be include Peacock, and obviously that's the easy part because Comcast owns Peacock, but also includes Apple TV Plus and Netflix. So we have to see how that's unfolded because Netflix has more money than anybody right now.
Well, the cable, not to get into a whole cable thing, but the cable services bit their nose to spite their face, and they're crying that the cable service is going away and they're not getting their carrot cheese. Well, you created streaming services of your own so that people can leave you to go to your streaming services. What did you think was going to happen?
Well, they were behind the 8 ball. We're getting in the weeds, but they were behind the 8 ball on streaming. and now they're trying to regain their footing. So if you look at a company like Peacock, because Peacock's going to hold the first, it's going to have the Eagles game. It's going to be on Peacock in Brazil. Obviously, you have a local component here, so you don't have to worry about it. But everywhere else in the country, it's going to be on Peacock. That Peacock by itself is losing a boatload of money,
billions.
For Comcast and NBC. But overall, those are very strong companies, and they understand where the future is going now. But they were kind of behind the eight. They didn't know it originally. Now they're trying to gather their feet and understand, well, people are cutting the cord. As we said, it's easier to stream. It's less expensive. And they got to readjust and go in that direction. So that's where we are right now.
Well, they're all going back towards giving you a cable package, but just like a
smaller but
package.
it's streaming. It's exactly.
By the way, it's Max, Hulu, and one of them, but Warner Brothers Discovery's in there. It's like ESPN, Warner Brothers Discovery. So it's like there's going to be a package somewhere, I would imagine, that's out there that hasn't been created.
And by the way, if you end up getting every single one of these packages, you're going to end up spending more money than cable.
Well, and I'll tell you where the next package could come, guys. I talked about Friday nights in December. The last 5 weeks into January is like a Friday night thing. That could be something, but when they go to 18 games and there's a London game or a international game every week, some network can get the international package and do that 9:30 game every single week. That's a whole nother window that we're looking at as the next possible evolution.
I've always thought, people talk about teams, and back in the day before Jacksonville kind of worked things out with the city there, there was a lot of talk that the Jacks, because the Cons have they own a soccer team. They have a lot of things going on in London. And, I always thought that's a logistical nightmare. You can't put a team over there, but you can do what you just said, Mike, and have a game every week.
Yep.
And everybody's got to go and do it that way. And then you have another broadcast window. I think that's the potential.
Yeah, I know Colin Thompson has said many times he doesn't think that it would work. The free agents wouldn't go there, all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
the people would have to live there. It's a whole thing. The logistics don't work out. But if you make every team go once a year and do it that way, it makes it difficult for the schedule makers, but you could do it in theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they go to 18 games, 2 buys, I think you'll see the 18 international games to go along with it.
It's possible. It's possible.
It's crazy where the NFL is going with all this. But, I mean, there's still so much upside for them to make money. They love the international market because that's, the cash.
Well, and that's what I don't think there is. That's part of the problem. Jeffrey Lurie's evolution on this subject has been, he hated international games when they first started. He fought to not go. He didn't want to give up home games, certainly. And now he's embraced it because, look, I don't think there's a lot of room for growth in North America. They got to get outside. Yeah. So that's why there's such a focus on international, where there's tremendous potential.
So there's a lot of buzz out there that this Eagles week 2 will be Monday night against the Falcons. That is
Monday night is that I don't know the opponent, but I would bet on Monday night.
I don't know why. What is it like? The Eagles have to play Minnesota on Monday night every year. Now that Kirk Cousins is in Atlanta, they have to play him on Monday night.
Yeah, it was week 2 Minnesota.
Now week 2. There's a lot of people putting that out there on. Many different
careful
platforms.
The schedule leaks, but if it's
the week 2 Monday night football makes sense.
Yes, I would bet on Monday. I would bet on Monday. And you probably want Kirk Cousins early because, he's coming off the Achilles, and who knows if he's 100%. So that would be a good spot for the Eagles. But week 1, I mean, to me, I look at themes, Mike. At Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on X. Does a tremendous job. Listen to him today. ESPN South Jersey, 97.3, 2-6. we just spent a whole lot of time talking about logistics. To me, that doesn't matter that much. It matters. The themes of the schedule matter. Like it's a theme, you're giving up a home game to a potential playoff combatant. That to me is a big deal, because if you lose that game, that's going to affect your seeding probably down the road if you're going where you think you're going. And then I mentioned very difficult AFC opponent division this year with the AFC North, but the NFC South isn't as difficult, but it's getting better. You mentioned, I mean, Atlanta wasn't good last year with Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke. Say what you want about Kirk Cousins. If he's healthy, they're more dangerous.
Right, so they won 7 games last year with Ridder. How many games has Cousins worked to them? You know, I would say at least they win 2 extra games because they have competent quarterback play, and that gets them to at least 9, I would think, right?
Yeah.
And that's my So, and Tampa Bay, the Eagles can't beat them in the playoffs. They're not a bad team. They're always good defensively with Todd Bowles. The Saints are kind of, you don't know where they're going to go.
But the game's down there, which is always tough.
Yeah, not a big fan of Dennis Allen, but they have good players, good talent. Carolina's the one weak team that you should say, and that's a home game as well.
By the way, I think that's the only home game on your schedule that you feel like is, I don't want to say a gimme, but every other home game is going to have some challenges. There's not a home game. You know, you got the Giants and Washington, but they're division games. I'm talking about the non-division games. That's a pretty
Jags and Steelers and Falcons and Browns.
That's a pretty good home schedule in terms of challenging. It's a pretty challenging home schedule. I think their road schedule is easier to navigate than the home schedule.
Well, Mike, what storyline for their opponent sticks out to you the most outside of the NFC East? To me, it's Lamar versus Jalen, the 2 primetime dual threat quarterbacks battling in Baltimore. What do you like?
I'll give you 2. 5 number 1 overall picks quarterbacks you're playing against. You got 5 guys who were drafted number 1 overall, and 1 guy that was drafted number 2 overall this year, Jaden Daniels. But you'll have Bryce Young in Philadelphia. You get Matthew Stafford. Off the top of my head, I don't remember all of them, but I did this yesterday. 5.
Trevor Lawrence
in Philadelphia, right? So overall, 5 number 1 quarterbacks, a number 2. Plus, you know, and that doesn't count Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, some of the veteran quarterbacks. So pretty interesting quarterback class. You're also facing, I believe it's 5, pretty sure, Super Bowl winning head coaches this season. You got Doug Peterson, you've got Sean McVay, you've got Mike McCarthy. Not that anybody's all that, but, you know, so you got a couple teams that have pretty good leadership as well. I think it's a challenging schedule overall. I mean, yes, they play that NFC North, which kind of lessens it a little bit, but the second place schedule, the Rams will be interesting. You know, they've gone out to LA. The Eagles haven't pretty much handled business. It seems like no matter anytime they go to LA, that's not like a big road problem. That's why I think their road schedule.
Yeah, they take over. Everybody takes over Los Angeles.
I do think the road schedule is easier to navigate than their homes. I think they have a pretty challenging road.
I don't know. I mean, you got Baltimore on the road, Cincinnati on the road, right there.
Those two
really good teams.
Those might be the 2 toughest tests of the year.
Yeah, those. Listen, I'm not saying every single game is easy, but I think the bulk of the road games are less challenging than your home schedule.
And Dallas, obviously, which the Eagles can't win in.
But the quarterbacks, you always look at the quarterbacks, Zander, and they play 5 number 1 overall picks and a number 2 overall pick. So
the other definitely, 2, by the way, to finish out for you, were Burrow and then Mayfield. Mayfield was a number 1 overall pick.
Joe Burrow. Yes, remember that guy. And by the way, one guy who wasn't a number 1 overall pick, Lamar Jackson. You're facing him. So the quarterbacks,
Eagles could have had him.
Yes, they traded that. The quarterbacks that they will face this year, you mentioned just Jackson against Jalen, but the slate of them, they all is a very talented slate of quarterbacks for the most part this season. You're going into every week where, you know, before you'd say, they'll confuse this young guy. They do good again. There's not a lot of those. Jaden Daniels is the number 2. Bryce Young is the former number 1. Those guys have a lot of talent. They might be young, but there's a lot of good quarterbacks on the schedule this year.
Hey, Mike, I forgot to ask you. I have to ask you real quick about if I told you in 2017 Jared Goff was going to get the monster deal and Carson Wentz was trying to stay in the league, keep his head above water, you would have called me crazy, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody, I mean, when that whole thing materialized. Now, keep in mind, Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl. He got the Lions to an NFC championship game. I mean,
yeah.
I'm living in a world right now. I talked about this the other day, the ESPN.com post-draft power rankings. The Lions are number 4. I'm living in a world where the freaking Detroit Lions are the 4th best team in the league. That's a scary world to be living in. That is a sign of something bad.
Right? They had Eagles at 5.
The Eagles were 5, yes.
Yeah.
The Eagles were 5. The Lions were 4.
Lions are a very good team, man.
I'm not saying the Lions aren't a good team. I'm agreeing with it, but I'm just saying to everybody out there, we're living in a world where the Lions are the 4th best team this league has. Something bad could happen.
I wonder if there's an emphasis on, and I wonder this, do teams put too much emphasis on getting these like superstar quarterbacks? And when I say superstar, I mean the Justin Herberts of the world, the guys with this uber talent, but you start to see like guys like Brock Purdy, guys like Jared Goff. I think even a guy like Jalen Hurts, you put all the pieces around him, you get from an organization, your structure right, you have just as good of a chance to go to a Super Bowl, I think, as if you have.
Well, it depends on, if you believe in the guy. Like Mike brings up the fact that, Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl, and he did. But even Sean McVay didn't believe in him because he wanted to go in a different direction.
And it ultimately worked out for him. He won a Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. Yeah.
Ultimately worked out for both, to be honest. But
yeah, it did.
I'm with you. It's very unlikely you're going to get Patrick Mahomes, so you might as well try to develop the guy you do have. And I think a lot of teams don't do that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I say all the time on draft day, these teams sell their soul on draft day to draft guys that are not first-round quarterbacks. I said on draft day,
3 of them this year.
Yeah,
3 of them.
The draft day, there was that gap between Bo Nix and then the next quarterback in like the 4th round. I said, that's because half these teams drafted a 4th-round quarterback in the top 10. These teams, they have no business being drafted where they are, these quarterbacks.
And some of the guys, like I think it started with there's JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix, to me, are 2nd-round picks. I'll be honest. Now, I think Nix has a chance to be successful because he gets matched up with Sean Payton.
Right.
I think McCarthy's got a chance because he's got Kevin O'Connell. I don't like Michael Penix's opportunities at all. He's got he'll have the luxury of waiting behind Kirk Cousins, but he's got a defensive head coach. I don't like that. If you're drafting a guy in the top 10, I want to do everything I can to make sure that player hits. But those are guys that shouldn't be in the 1st round, and they're in the top 12 because teams are so desperate to put themselves in these positions.
Does Zach Wilson beat out Bo Nix because he was the number 2 overall pick, by the way?
I think no. I think because he's been ruined, and that's another thing. I think you see.
Well, Sean Payton, man, say, hey, I'll take this kid and I'll fix him.
Yeah, and Zach Wilson, he does have an arm. He's got a freaking cannon.
And he can move. He's mobile. I mean, he just was in a terrible situation. That offensive line was horrendous.
But while I say that, like if you gave Andy Reid, say Spencer Rattler, and he didn't have Patrick Mahomes, I'd have more confidence in Spencer Rattler than any of those 3 quarterbacks.
By the way, the reports about how teams were worried about him because of that TV show. Thank the Lord that there are people that have a brain, because that guy on that show sucked at life. He was terrible. He was so bad on that show, and I'm glad that it has stuck with him throughout this, because you can't act like that, man. You can't act like that and think that, like, if you're at that high profile and think that that's going to be okay. Now, maybe he's been to 2 different colleges. He's been okay in college. I was never that impressed with him. South Carolina.
No, by no means am I saying I'm impressed by him. I'm just saying situation matters. And if you get somebody with some talent around Andy Reid, you got a better chance than if you got somebody maybe even with a little more talent around a coach that's not going to be able to take advantage of.
Now, listen, he was a kid at the time, but I hope he grew up. I hope he grew up and learned from that, because maybe he was talented enough to be drafted higher, but a lot of people reported that kind of, threw them off. But watching him now, this was my girlfriend's son was watching the show. I was like, man, this kid will never be on a team I'm coaching, and that's kind of stuck with him. Where was he before South Carolina?
Oklahoma.
Reminds me of the Ben Simmons. You guys remember the Ben Simmons when they followed him around?
Yeah, I do remember that Ben Simmons. Ironically, you talk about Jared Goff now, and Ben Simmons. You got Brandon Ingram, who was the number 2 pick and has been pretty good in that draft. But there's a lot of buzz, obviously, about the Sixers possibly getting him. How ironic that would be. But Jared Goff, to get that deal, good for him, man. But that shows you a good leader and a guy that the team rallies behind. The city has rallied behind that kid, and what that means to turn a franchise around.
Yeah, and they've given him a good team, which to my point earlier.
Yeah, that helps. They got a good offensive line. They got good weapons. They got a good running game. Yeah, I mean, Detroit's, I would say, they were so bad for so long. And then you wake up one day, they're drafted in the top 10 every year, and you say, wow, they got a lot of good players.
They stopped drafting wide receivers.
Yeah, eventually.
They drafted wide receivers in the first round for like 3 straight years. Charles Rogers.
Calvin Johnson, they got
Calvin Johnson. That one worked.
Yeah. It worked. Didn't get them what they wanted, but it worked.
Yeah.
Well, they had no quarterback, no offensive line, and nothing else.
Yeah.
But they've done a really good job. And Arnold's they got 2 corners out there. That was the spot they needed help at last year, and they went and got Rakestraw and Arnold. So that team is going to be tough. So they deserving of the number 4 spot, but we're living in a world where they are the 4th best team, and that's scary.
And they should have beat San Francisco last year.
Yes, they should.
Be honest, they outplayed them.
Yeah, they took a big early lead in that game, didn't they? They were up I want to say 14.
Yeah, Dan Campbell went for a bunch of 4th downs, and they didn't execute, and he got a lot of crap for that. But that's how they played all season, and they put incredible stress on you by doing that. Very good team. Yeah, watch out for Detroit. Very good team.
Yeah, the one other NFC team I'll say to watch out for is the Commanders. I think they're going to jump the Cowboys as the number 2 in the NFC East. Maybe not this year, but next year, because I think the Cowboys are in la-la land. They're not signing anybody. Dak Prescott's still not signed. CeeDee Lamb's still not signed. Who knows what's happening with them? I like that Jaden Daniels guy, the Commanders got. So we'll see what happens. Yeah,
the 2 teams, I like what Washington did in the draft. I think they've had a good offseason. I don't know that they're ready, as you said, to make that jump this year. But Green Bay is obviously a team that's going to make the big jump, but I kind of like Atlanta. I like what Atlanta has kind of done, and they, like I said, they won 7 games last year with terrible quarterback play. If Kirk Cousins comes back from that injury, that's a team that could probably win 10, 11 games in that division.
That's why I didn't understand the Penix pick. Like, you're in a position.
I'll tell you why.
Get a player that can help your team.
Well, here's my thoughts on the Penix pick. And it's not that like this is like – I think they felt that Cousins was good enough to get them to 10 wins. So now they're kind of stuck in that wild card area, which means you're in the draft in the middle, so you can't get that next quarterback. So they said, the heck with it. We'll just go get that next quarterback now while we're stuck in the middle, and hopefully we're in the middle and this guy takes us to the next level, because I think they understand Cousins is good enough to get us to like 9, 10, 11 wins. And then when he's 39 years old and done, now we have the next guy instead of having to draft that guy at number 17 or 18 or trade up to go get picked. So it's kind of a preemptive move.
It's like a Jordan Love move almost, except they took Jordan Love later in the first round.
What did they say? The best time to draft a quarterback is when you have one.
Yeah, Andrew Brandt says that all the time, but he also acknowledges that there's a real world effect on people. And for all the talk about Green Bay, it was ugly with Brett Favre at the end. It was ugly with Aaron Rodgers at the end. Kirk Cousins is already pissed off. There's a human being effect versus the vacuum effect. I think your point, Mike, from a vacuum is the correct one, but you got to deal with people. And people get pissed off when you do shit like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if Jordan Love pans out, that's going to be, John, you always talk about how they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback play. I'm not
they're
saying
the most
Jordan Love's gonna be
spoiled.
Hall of Fame, but
I say,
he
they're
looked good last year.
Green Bay's the most spoiled fan base in the NFL because they have no idea what it's like to look for a quarterback. An entire past generation of people. The old people remember Lynn Dickey. Yeah, they knew the pain of other NFL teams. They have not had that pain for 30 plus years. And it looks like, damn it, they got it right again. Because I think Jordan, I'm not going to say Jordan Love's going to be those guys, but he looks pretty good.
Yeah, he looks damn good. And I like their coach they have who's calling the offensive mind, and Matt LaFleur. So
all right, we kept you late. I apologize, Mike.
All right, Gil, we kept you real long.
That's because you're so engaging to talk to. So it's a compliment. So
make sure you follow Mike on Twitter, everybody, at Mike Gill Show, and listen to him on 97.3 ESPN down the shore from 2 to 6 on the Sports Bash. Mike, thank you, man.
All right, everybody. See you.
See
you, man.
There's Mike Gill joining us. Good 45 minutes with Mike Gill. So good stuff there. Got into the weeds a little bit with the networks and stuff, but pretty good stuff overall. Johnny Mac, we'll take a quick timeout. Coming up in 9:20, we have BLG. But I want to talk offense with you, Eagles offense, that is. I want to talk Jalen Hurts and see what they have to do or what the expectation is for them to do this year. As Johnny Mac, I'm starting to feel, and you talked about this last year, I'm starting to feel expectations on this team are too high. Everybody's like Super Bowl or bust.
Well, that is correct already. I've been talking about that for a while.
I thought it would be tempered after you collapse in the last 7 or 8 games of the season, but
yeah,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I think the Eagles should try to temper it. Stop talking about special players and different. Just let it play out.
Well, maybe the expectation on the inside is what it is on the outside.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that coming up next on Birds 365. I want to thank everybody in the chat for listening. If you enjoyed Mike Gill, if you enjoyed hour number 1 of Birds 365, make sure you drop us a like. Coming up in 10 minutes or less, Brandon Lee Gowton. So we'll talk to him in hour number 2. Stay tuned here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Wednesday's edition of Birds 365, joined by Johnny Mack now. Coming up soon, Brandon Lee Gouton. Johnny Mack, I teased we were going to talk about offense, but we only got 7 minutes here, and we just talked about expectations. You ready for this, Johnny Mack? Quinyon Mitchell, Eagles' first-round draft pick, was on WIP this morning on the radio. They just tweeted out a quote from Quinyon Mitchell. Year one, I just want to win a Super Bowl. I feel like we got the players on this team, the coaching staff to do it, so we just got to go out there and execute and grind every day. Quinyon Mitchell wants to win a Super Bowl in year one. That expectation train, Johnny Mack, is not slowing down anytime soon.
Well, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, I want players to, think they can win a Super Bowl, should win a Super Bowl, have that kind of confidence. To me, it's two different parts of the process. I mean, I want confident players. That's a big part of this game. And they kind of lost it late last season. So I don't have a problem with that, but
I don't have a problem with it, but I do think it's going to, fans love to hear that. So is it going to skew the expectations of the team? Because to me, when I look at this team right now, the more I zoom out, and I'm a fan of the Eagles. I've been a fan of the Eagles my whole life. I grew up right outside the city. They've been my team since I went to high school in the city. This has been my team. When I zoom out, to me, it looks like 2024 is a get back on track year. Get your rookies, get your new coordinators acclimated, maybe make a good playoff push. And then next year, when your coordinators are here for a year now, your rookies are a little bit older, your defense is older, all of their big players are signed through the next couple years. Next year would be the better Super Bowl push year, but you can't tell anybody that. People don't want to think like that. They want to go and get that Super Bowl this year, which is not a bad mentality.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad mentality either to want to push for a Super Bowl. I think your phrasing of it is probably more realistic. To get up to speed and maybe make a significant Super Bowl run next season if everything works out to a good degree. But I don't think the Eagles are necessarily set up that way because of their decisions with the coaching staff. We talked about, what does Nick Sirianni have to do to be here next year as the head coach? Would one playoff win do it? I would say not making the playoffs. He's out. I would say that. Would one and done be acceptable? I don't know if it would.
It almost wasn't last year. Now, the nature of the way the season went was different than,
certainly. Yeah, the collapse complicated things. But I don't know if, just making the playoffs is enough. I don't know if winning again. I don't know. Only Jeffrey Lurie knows. And then you have the complication of Kellen Moore. Is it a very good offense? If it's a very good offense, but you lose because maybe the defense is not up to snuff, and maybe you think about that difficult move. That's why of keeping Kellen Moore and moving on from Nick Sirianni and elevating him. That's why I don't like the way Jeffrey Lurie handled it. I don't like it. And I don't think it bodes well. But from the Eagles organizational perspective, they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. They're not thinking the way you're thinking. And they think they have a chance, if everything goes correctly, to win a Super Bowl. And I don't think that's a bad mentality. I would just say,
I don't either. I think it's the right mentality, to be honest. That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal in football, is to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And I would just and Howie's usually smarter than this with all the hype surrounding Saquon Barkley. And part of it is generated by the fact that teammates are awed by his athleticism and skills and all that type of stuff. So he's one of those guys NFL players are in awe of. So part of it is self-sustaining, but look, the history it's not there. It's not there. So to create these expectations and how we call them, like I would pull back on that stuff, and he's usually smart enough to do that. And then with the rookies, yeah, I mean, it's not Quignon's fault, but it's natural. You'll see that in 32 other cities, 31 other cities. They think, and obviously now I'm talking. There's more than one New York team, and obviously, but you get my point.
Yeah, I get your point.
They're all hyped up about their rookies, and history says that a bunch of rookies are not going to hit the ground running. More so with the 5th round picks. It's ridiculous, the expectations on the 5th round picks on this team.
Yeah, they've gotten out of hand.
Yeah. We got a wide receiver 3, a starting linebacker, starting right guard in the 5th round. That ain't happening. Maybe one of them hits. Cross your fingers. And that's probably not going to be for a year down the road or 2 years down the road. But to think that you're going to hit week 1 and Anaya Smith is going to be the wide receiver 3 and Trevor Keegan's going to be the starting right guard and Jeremiah Trotter's going to be a starting linebacker. I'll say this, if that happens, that ain't a good sign. That ain't a good sign. So I would say be careful what you wish for in that type of circumstance.
My problem with where we're going into this season, we've talked a little bit about Nick Sirianni is kind of not lame duck officially, but in a way he's a lame duck coach. If he doesn't reach expectations, whatever they are, we don't, as you just said, we don't know what Lurie's expectations are. He's going to be gone. But when you bring in 2 new coordinators, like, shouldn't you be giving them a year to get acclimated? Even with Shane Steichen, year 2 is when it really took off. Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's what I've argued with. To me, it's inconceivable that the Eagles hired Sean Desai and Brian Johnson as coordinators and didn't think there would be a learning curve. I mean, that's on you, whether you want to blame Nick or Jeffrey Lurie or Howie, whomever you want to blame.
Well, I think they think that again with these new coordinators. And it's a better thought process when you have guys that are established and have experience. But
well, yeah, it's somewhat more understandable. But and Jeffrey, from Jeffrey's perspective, he very well might think Nick Sirianni is not on the hot seat. And he might think everything's fine from his perspective, but he's got to be smart enough to understand the outside view. The outside view is he's a lame duck. And you could say that's not meaningful, but guess what? If the outside view, if the betting markets say it, the players think it. So just because your little inner circle says, oh, no, we're fine. You have to realize this is a public-facing industry and how it's coming off to the general public. And that's why, I don't like it. And I haven't liked it from day one.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I think the expectations are high. They should be high, but I don't know. I'm not as sold that this is a Super Bowl team yet as many others are, including people inside the Eagles organization. But we'll talk about that coming up next. Brandon Lee Gowton, BLG from Bleeding Green Nation, will join us on Birds 365. We'll talk schedule release, and we'll kick around with him some of the things that Johnny Mack and I have been talking about all week long. So stay tuned here on Birds 365. Be sure to drop us a like. Let's get up over 100 likes if you're enjoying Birds 365 today. So we appreciate everybody in the chat room. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with BLG.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. Wednesday's edition of Birds 365. Schedule release day. BLG schedule release day. Today, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Excited to see when these games are going to be taking place.
Yeah, happy Logistics Day. I like to call it BLG. We already know the opponents. We're all talking about times and dates and games. But with the Eagles, that's always a big deal from our perspective, certainly. And from a traveling perspective, everybody wants to travel to games. It's a big day. I will predict one thing, BLG. A lot of non-Sunday 1 o'clock games. That's my prediction. What's your prediction?
Just like last year. Yeah. I'd say a little too many of the non-1 o'clock games.
Yes. We all think that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure, with the expectations this year, it'll be similar last year. But for as much as we kind of make a little bit of fun of the finding out all the dates and times and whatnot. It was relevant last year when certainly, they had that big gauntlet and everything. And
there's always themes that are relevant.
Exactly.
Remember that 3-game road trip that ended on Christmas Eve in Dallas? I said at the time, I thought, boy, 3rd of 3 road games on Christmas Eve in Dallas. That is not a good spot.
Yeah, and there was a couple in there too with teams coming off of extra rest against the Eagles, I believe. Yeah. So, you got to look for things like that.
Yeah. And those are important. Yeah. AFC North. That is my first theme. That's the AFC team, your division you're playing this year. That's difficult because you have Baltimore's a Super Bowl contender. Cincinnati probably will be with Joe Burrow healthy. We'll see how that shakes out. Cleveland with her old buddy Jim Schwartz is a very good team.
Mm-hmm.
And Pittsburgh, 17 consecutive years, they've been at least got their head above water, never had a losing season with Mike Tomlin. That's the worst division to play in the AFC, and you got them. But you get the NFC South. So does that kind of even things out a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does, even though, we obviously the Eagles season ended there losing to the Bucks, but I think you're not super intimidated of that division as much. I don't think there's a whole lot of unknowns really in that division. We'll see what, Bryce Young is in year 2. That'll be interesting, but it's possible he's just not very good based on what we saw in year 1, or at least a lot.
Atlanta should be a little bit better with Kirk Cousins. They
Sure.
won 7 games with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. They should be able to get
but the Eagles have been able to beat Kirk Cousins, at
Yes,
least in the Nick Sirianni era.
Yeah. So they should be a little bit better. But I got to tell you, and I've been saying this, and I'll run it by you. Well, I get it's about more than the Eagles when it comes to the first game in Brazil and all that kind of stuff. But that's the worst home game that they could possibly have given up, in my perspective. Because they're not putting Dallas. They're not doing that. So you put Dallas aside.
Right.
It's the worst home game because Green Bay's good. And Green Bay's going to be a team you're probably fighting for playoff seeding down the road. Look, if you win the game, it doesn't matter. But if you lose that game and you give up a home game and it would have been at Lincoln Financial Field, that's difficult. I would have preferred Cleveland as the opponent, but that's just from a football perspective. It's about much more than that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think back when the rumors were that the Eagles might play the Browns or the Packers, I was kind of thinking, okay, which would be the most beneficial scenario for them there? And I guess I kind of came down to the Browns at the time, in part because I think there's a chance that if Deshaun Watson plays like he did last year, he might get benched at some point in the season.
Yeah.
And maybe you kind of get the benefit of him looking bad early in the year. Whereas I think that Packers team, I think they're kind of being slept on a little bit. I mean, what they did in Dallas was really impressive, how they just went down there. And I thought they played better than the 49ers in the divisional round. They obviously didn't win that game, but I thought they kind of outplayed the Niners in that game, obviously up until the end there. So, and they're incredibly, obviously the youngest team in the NFL last year. I think there's a chance they hit the ground running here. So, yeah, I think that is a tough week 1 opponent.
Yeah.
LJ, what other game sticks out to you outside the NFC East? Obviously, everybody's excited for the Cowboys games, but a couple good quarterback matchups and good storylines. You got Joe Burrow, you got Lamar Jackson playing on the road, and then the one at home that sticks out to me is Doug Peterson coming back with Trevor Lawrence. I know they're not the greatest team, and Trevor hasn't really lived up to expectations just yet, but I do like that storyline. What sticks out to you, or what are you most excited for to figure out?
I think you hit on it there with the big quarterbacks. Obviously, as we talked about here, the AFC North itself is a big challenge in that regard. Even though, the Browns, we don't necessarily feel awesome about that, and we'll see what happens or who even is the Steelers starter. I tend to think it'll be Russell Wilson, but, certainly we'll see about that. But yeah, I think it's kind of about, Jalen Hurts versus Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts versus Lamar Jackson. It's about these marquee matchups.
Yeah. It's looking like it's going to be Atlanta week 2 Monday night. So you're right about it. Seems like I think the Eagles played the Vikings week 2 the last 2 seasons. I think so. It's always Kirk Cousins in week 2. Atlanta coming in, and it's natural. They should give him the extra day coming off that trip to Brazil. So it looks like it's going to be Atlanta week 2 Monday Night Football. But Mike Gill, we had Mike Gill on. He brought up a good point. I think that's a bad job by ESPN. And Gill predicted Jacksonville because they just hired Jason Kelce.
Yep.
You have to sit down with Jason Kelce and Doug Peterson. That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Who cares about Atlanta? Yeah.
Agree. I do agree. Who cares about Atlanta? But I do think if you want to know if the Eagles are a good team or not, it is kind of interesting to play Kirk Cousins early in the year, because typically my thing with him is he's the litmus test of if you can beat Kirk Cousins, you're probably a good team, and if you lose to him, you're probably not a good team.
That's true.
So there's an early barometer for the 2024 Eagles here.
Yeah.
I think game 1 is a great barometer too. I mean, we obviously already talked about the game, but that's a tough test. That team really dismantled the Cowboys. That was on NFL Network, and I rewatched it the other day. They put up 48 on the Cowboys, and it looked relatively easy for them when they did it. So 2 good tests, I think, to start if the Falcons is true to start the season for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Vic Fangio certainly will get an instant impression of him and
Yeah.
feedback on him right away out of the gate. And obviously, with the Eagles, new defensive talent that they've added as well, I think that's going to be a big test for really all of that early on.
In 2017, later in the season, BLG, if we were talking and I said to you that Jared Goff would be the one getting the monster contract and Carson Wentz would be struggling to stay in the league, would you have called me an insane person?
Yeah, I probably would have. I mean, I honestly never really got the Jared Goff thing like earlier in both of his in Carson Wentz's careers. I just thought, that upside with Wentz was higher and tantalizing. And, this second act that Jared Goff has had, like shockingly so. I mean, even for the Rams, who gave up an extra first-round pick just to dump his contract, basically, and then
it's unbelievable. And by the way, he made a Super Bowl with the Rams. Sean McVay kind of rescued his career, but even he didn't believe in him. It was like, he's trying to get rid of him.
Yep. Yeah, so yes, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
BLG, Johnny Mack and I talked a little bit about expectations. Quinyon Mitchell saying he's ready to go to a Super Bowl in year one. What are your expectations for the Eagles this year? Are you in a Super Bowl or bust type of mode, or are you ready to give these coordinators and these young guys some time and see how it goes?
I mean, the talent's here. I don't think that's a question. Obviously, I'm not saying they have a perfect roster. They have pitfalls just like any team does. But I think by and large, the talent is here. The question is the coaching, especially when it comes, I think, mostly to the head coach and obviously the offense. Whereas, there's more of a question there where Vic Fangio, there's more of a track record. I'm not saying the defense is going to be elite automatically, but you feel like you can at least get some kind of baseline competency. You feel like you're not going to have a situation like last year where it totally just goes off the rails. That would be pretty shocking and hard to project, where, as the case with the offense, you totally, the talent is there, but are they going to maximize it? That is still very much a question that needs to be answered. When it comes to this team's outlook. I mean, look, there hasn't been a repeat winner in the NFC East, as we all know. So I feel like the expectation is you should be the division winners when that's what history tells us you're going to do. And the Cowboys seem like they might, take a step back, fall apart a little bit with Mike McCarthy on the hot seat. So, I think the expectation is you have to win the division and you have to be a legitimate contender.
Yeah. And we were just talking about this. So in your mind, where does Nick Sirianni have to go to be back in 2025?
Yeah, I think we'll know. All right. I think like by the end of the season, it'll feel a certain way. I don't think it'll be like, well, what do they do? I think most would kind of say, again, division win in there, that kind of puts you in a good spot to, be at home, win a playoff game, at least make the divisional round. I don't think it's as simple as checking a box like that, because let's say
you get blown out. Yeah. Situation might matter.
Or let's say somehow the defense is like the number one unit in the league and the offense can't do anything. Well, then at that point it's like, okay, I don't think that's going to cut it.
Yeah. I think a lot of what is going to depend for Nick Sirianni is how his coordinators do. BLG, we had you on last Wednesday, right before the coordinator spoke. What did you make of the comments the coordinators had? I thought they sounded good. It's just a press conference, but I thought they said the right things. They have the right mentality. But what'd you take away from the coordinators?
Well, Kellen Moore definitely likes talking about process. That definitely came up a lot in his presser. But I liked Vic Fangio's presser more from just the standpoint of, I mean, he's going to be great, I think, talking to the media all year, just in terms of what you would expect a straight shooter, and honest and succinct. And I think it's going to be interesting. We kind of got a first look at even about how, Vic Fangio said he's going to be pushing for the Eagles to practice a little bit more than they have. And kind of, made comments that were kind of not totally in line in terms of load management and whatnot with what the Eagles do. They're like number one load management team. So I think that's already kind of an interesting look.
I love Vic, by the way, PLC.
For sure.
I love him. And what does that say about the Eagles, though? Because they seem to really believe in this philosophy And I don't know if it's a good thing to just say, all right, we had a bad stretch and it was beyond bad. We don't need to re-legislate that, but I don't know if you believe in the load management, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, what you wake up one day and say, you know what, we were wrong. I don't know if I'd like that.
Yeah, I would not say the Eagles need to, totally cast it aside. I think it's more about tweaking it. I mean, last year, I think John, you can speak to this too. Like that was like the most light Eagles training camp schedule I've ever attended. Like it was incredibly light.
By the way, I like that. That's
Sure,
part of it.
sure, for your and I's sake, sure.
Yeah.
But like, I think they could probably go like a little bit. There's probably
I agree.
There's gray area they can get to without going over.
I'm not talking about the actual implementation. I'm talking about the philosophy. Like,
sure.
The concern for me is if you believe this one day and then all of a sudden your belief is shaken that quickly, that concerns me.
Well, does a
Not
1
that
and
they're
7
even
stretch?
right.
I mean, that's what shakes it, right? When you have a 1 and
7
stretch and collapse, and your expectations are high, and you get blown out by the Bucs in round 1. Maybe that's enough to shake their core philosophy.
I'm gonna expand this to motion because I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I want to run it by you, BLG, because the Eagles are 32nd in motion, which is kind of ridiculous against what Nick Sirianni always says: wise man avoids all extremes. Well, that's pretty extreme. You never want to be bottom 5 in anything. And his whole philosophy of not using motion was based on Phillip Rivers, because Phillip didn't like motion and he loves Phillip Rivers. And I'm like, from that perspective, that's dumb. You don't have Phillip Rivers anymore. You got to make things easier for Jalen Hurts. So you probably got to move off your philosophy at least a little bit, or change it, or morph it to what is best for the quarterback. And I don't know what that is for Jalen Hurts. On the other hand, oh, sorry.
Oh, well, just to add in there too, like if I'm not mistaken, even before Nick Sirianni, some of the motion rates for the Eagles were kind of lower, which also kind of speaks to, there's a Jeff Stoutland element there too.
Yeah, good point. I hadn't thought of that. But then I was listening to Kellen, and Kellen was like, he's always been top 10 in motion. He's always been on the other end of the spectrum. And I asked him the question. He was like, well, my dad loved it when I was growing up. He was a coach. I used it a lot in Boise State when I was a big time quarterback. And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, that's great, but what does that have to do with Jalen Hurts? Like, so if I'm criticizing Nick Sirianni for just saying, oh, this is what I believe in because Phil Rivers liked it, well, I got to criticize Kellen Moore for liking the other end just because his dad liked it or he liked it when he was a quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to think on this, where to end on this spectrum.
I mean, I do think it's a little like naive to just be like more motion, Eagles Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
It can't be that simple. Like that's just not. Now, again, it's fair to say that maybe they should probably do, like Sirianni himself has said, they should do it more than never. That seems like a good way to kind of get things involved. And obviously, it's not just about doing it for the sake of doing it, but doing it with purpose and finding good ways to actually utilize it, which is, I think, in some reason why you bring in Kellen Moore. But yeah, it goes back to, I think, what is kind of the crux of this whole operation of bringing Kellen Moore in and molding that with what you already have and what in terms of what Sirianni wants to do and then what Jalen Hurts wants to do. And then you have a whole dynamic here changing, by the way, with Jason Kelce out and Cam Jurgens in. And we're going to see, who exactly might be taking more of that, responsibility there before the snap at the line of scrimmage. So there's a lot of moving parts here.
Just to play devil's advocate, John, and you, I don't know what the motion rate for the Eagles was.
30 seconds.
Shane Steichen, no, not last.
They were bottom under Shane as well.
Right.
Is the common denominator there Jalen Hurts? Just to play devil's advocate, is he the guy that might not like?
I think
motion?
he's part of it, but as BLG brings up, I think Stout's part of it. I think Nick's part of it. I think Jalen's part of it. I think Shane's part of it. I think Brian's
you hear people talk about Jalen's ability to pick up the blitz. He struggles with it a little bit. Jason Kelce's telling him where the pressure's coming. add in another guy moving. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Maybe Jalen Hurts.
I think the Kelsey stuff was overblown. I mean, Kelsey would have been telling anybody where the pressure's going. I mean, that you're just taking advantage of a very unique player, and that is going to change because you don't have that any longer. It's not about. I don't know if Jalen's comfortable with it or not because he won't be honest about it. But if he's not, you better not use a lot of it. You probably have to use it a little bit more. But that's what I'm saying about Kellen Moore. Yeah. If he's got if he does have a quarterback who's not comfortable with it, he better not be using it because he liked it.
Well, we're going to learn that quick. If he's been top 10 in motion everywhere he's been, and then he comes here and he doesn't use motion at all, it's one of two things. It's Jalen Hurts or it's Nick Sirianni telling him to get rid of it.
Or both,
Or both.
Probably. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. To me, that's the biggest story of the year, BLG, is how Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore mesh.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be a good offense. There's just too much talent. I think the defense is going to be better because of Vic's presence, but there's some talent deficiencies there. Offensively, they have top 5 talent. There's only so far they can, and last year they were 8th in the NFL. So to me, that's the floor. They got to be better than that. And it's about integrating all these pieces and those big moments, making sure Jalen Hurts is on the right page and there's no more Jets debacles or Seattle debacles. As long as you clean that stuff up, I think you're fine offensively.
Well, that is something that Kellen Moore kind of touched on a lot too, in terms of like cleaning it up, kind of like simplifying, like keeping the operation.
Clean operation.
That was what he said.
Yeah.
His number one preference was, and I don't know if that's related to last year based on what he evaluated or not, but I mean, it fits with what you just said.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley. I want to talk real quick about Saquon. John, you didn't love the signing because, and I'm with you in this regard. And our buddy Caden Steele from NJ.com brought up a great point about it yesterday. Like, I'll ask both of you, why do you think they brought Saquon Barkley in? Because you look at the last 2 years with Miles Sanders, with DeAndre Swift, they were largely productive running backs, both well over 1,000 yards rushing. They didn't use them much out of the passing game, but like, what does Saquon have to do to merit the worthiness of the contract? Is there something I'm missing? Did they bring him in for a reason that I can't see other than to be a great running back? What do you think his role is, and how does he live up to the expectations that come with his contract?
Well, I think his role, is just like the most established number one running back the Eagles have had, really, and like since Shady, like a long time ago, just that clear number one running back, not a timeshare guy.
Three down back. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like a legitimate 20 carry per game kind of back.
Yeah. Which could take pressure off Hurts, I guess, if you look at it like that too. Yeah.
Well, my problem is I think they keep bringing up like he's the closest thing. I think they're chasing the Christian McCaffrey ghost.
Sure.
And they want that kind of impact on their offense, and I don't think they're getting it.
I don't either. And I think it's more on the quarterback than it is on Saquon, to be honest with you.
I don't know.
I think it's just hard to get that.
But my point is, Brock Purdy drops back. Brock Purdy hikes the ball. His first thing is get rid of that ball instantly. Jalen Hurts has never been that guy. He's a playmaker, and he wants to be a playmaker. He likes being a playmaker. So if you're not going to dish the ball that quickly, there's only one ball. You got AJ, you got Devontae. I don't see that role for Saquon at all.
Well, either do I, and that's part of the problem. I do think which is, again, you're not paying him to be a pass protector, but I think he's a better pass protector than Miles and DeAndre. I think he's a better player than Miles and DeAndre. So it's not about Saquon the player. But if you're looking for that imprint on the offense that Christian McCaffrey gives his teams, I don't think you're getting that. So if that's what you're trying to sell, and I hope I'm wrong, I hope my evaluation is wrong, but everything about the NFL comes down to evaluation. I think the Eagles got it wrong if they think that's what they're getting.
I think philosophically, they looked at what they value, which is obviously offense as an organization, and another way to get better on offense. And I also think they looked at the value And when I feel like they can kind of justify, okay, we're paying Saquon this kind of money when, Darnell Mooney is out there getting like a similar contract for the Falcons and obviously different positions. But I feel like that's where it kind of becomes justifiable, where they
Right.
think they're adding a really good player at a pretty reasonable and low commitment relatively, like essentially like kind of like a 2-year
Yeah.
deal, where they feel like, okay. And also, and I wonder how much this is part of it. Like, I don't think the Eagles love to rotate their backs on a given drive. I don't know if that's just an anecdotal observation, but I feel like typically like they don't kind of like to have guys going in and out as much as they like kind of stick with the running back on that drive, and to a detriment at times. And I think, just kind of having that Saquon Barkley 3-down presence there, it kind of just gives the coaches something they don't have to worry about in terms of that rotation.
It also puts more pressure on Kellen Moore from the perspective of, the old adage, BLG, good problem to have, but, good problem has the word problem in it as well. And that's, you got to keep everybody happy, and you got to keep distributing and keep everybody involved. Now, generally, if you win games, nobody's going to complain. But if you start to lose a little bit, it's going to be, oh, you got to get the ball more to so-and-so, whether it's AJ, Devontae, Saquon, even Dallas Goedert. I could see that developing early. Like, where's Dallas Goedert in this offense? I could see that being an early season storyline developing. It's a bigger deal than I think people realize to keep all those playmakers happy.
Yeah, and the Eagles are obviously very like aware of that in terms of their moves or lack thereof. That was like kind of a big topic last year where, there was thought that like maybe the Eagles would go after like DeAndre Hopkins or draft Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, no, they're not going to add another volume monster to this offense when they're already trying to feed the mouths that they have. That's just not what they were going to do. And look at what they did in this year's draft, where again, they didn't add anyone, or even in free agency between Devontae Parker and Paris Campbell, who's going to dominate targets as much as they might be able to be a role player in this offense.
Yeah, John, I know you. I mean, and I agree. It's all about winning. If you're winning games, you don't think anybody will get mad. But if the Eagles start out 5-0 and AJ Brown has 200 yards through 5 games, I don't think he's going to be a very happy camper.
By the way, real quick, Bloomberg is reporting that Netflix is going to purchase the Christmas games. We kind of knew, for less than $150 million per game. Oh, so they're keeping it under $150 million per game. Good for Netflix to have that kind of money for those throwaway Christmas. Hopefully the Eagles aren't involved, but we'll see how that shakes out. Wednesday football. BLG. Not excited for that. I guess I'll end it there with you. Bring it back to the schedule at Brandon Galton. If you looked at this schedule and said, biggest positive, biggest negative, is it just about NFC South versus AFC North? That being a positive. Is it losing that Green Bay game as a home game that would have been at Lincoln Financial Field? Is it having Jacksonville at home as that extra game? What do you think's the best sort of potential aspect of it and the worst potential aspect of it?
I think just going back to what I said earlier about last year, like, I think not the only reason why they dropped off, but a big reason why they dropped off is because they had that, not only the gauntlet, but the gauntlet, again, were that situation where they're playing like the Bills on short rest. And then they played the Cowboys and the 49ers on short rest, while the 49ers are coming off extra rest. Like, there was just that stretch in there where the rest disadvantage was way out of whack. And, they had to play overtime in the Bills game. And the pass rush fell off during this time because they played like so many more snaps than they usually do. And I don't think they ever really recovered from that. So to me, when the schedule comes out, I'm looking at like, the rest. And is there a stretch where the Eagles are either getting, punished like that, or is there a stretch where maybe they can actually take advantage of that this year, where they're on the flip side of that, and maybe they have extra rest going into like a Cowboys game or something, and how that could be a really big deal?
Yeah, agreed. And last year, that was a big story, obviously, with the gauntlet of games coming out of the bye week and all that. And that obviously had a big impact on the Eagles.
Yeah, I forgot about all those defensive snaps. Yeah, BLG's right. They had that stretch where they were just constantly on the field.
Yeah.
It was like they played like 5 games worth of snaps in 3 games.
Yeah. And that probably contributed to Jalen Carter's stretch run and Jordan Davis and all the conditioning issues and not having gas left in the tank. Yeah, they just couldn't get off the field on third downs. That hurts. Vic should fix that, at least to a certain extent.
Right.
I think that I'm positive about. And it's less of a, to go from 26th in defense to say 15th or 16th. I think that's my prediction. They're going to be solid, at least middle of the road on defense.
Yeah, and I think that's enough of an improvement to make a difference for the team. Also, the offense too. The offense 3 and outs kill the defense, as we just talked about. How many snaps the defense got. So if the offense can be better too, that will help the defense. But BLG, we kept you long. Thank you for joining in today. We'll see how it all shakes out tonight at 8 p.m. when they release the schedule. Thanks for joining Birds 365. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
There's BLG from Bleeding Green Nation. Good stuff from BLG. Good stuff from Mike Gill today, too. So 2 good guests to prep you for the NFL schedule release tonight. Johnny Mack and I will come back. We'll put a wrap on this Wednesday edition. And then tomorrow, I keep teasing this offensive segment, but I don't see where it's going to fit tomorrow when we're doing win-loss. We'll see. We'll do all that tomorrow. And then if you guys are in the chat box, we appreciate it. Make sure you drop us a like. I think we're at 94. Let's get to 100 before the show ends. So thank you guys for checking in, for liking the show. We're up to 95. So 5 more likes to get to 100, and we'll get out of here. Coming back, we'll put a wrap on this edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey. official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Wrapping up our Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mack, it's scheduled release day. We've been waiting for it. Next week we'll have OTAs, so we'll start to get into some more football stuff. Any last predictions? Any last thing Johnny Mack is waiting to find out when the schedule is released tonight at 8 p.m.?
No, I got to be honest. I mean, other than the logistics, some stuff coming out, obviously, certain situations, tough games, as I mentioned, Baltimore on the road, Cincinnati on the road.
I'm looking for themes, kind of like you talked about a little bit earlier.
Exactly. If you have to play Baltimore, even though it's not a long trip, obviously, if you have to play them, say the third of 3 consecutive road games, you're probably going to be in trouble in that game. And things like that are interesting, but as again, the NFL doesn't hate your team, and I'm speaking to everyone, not just Eagles fans. They have a bunch of TV partners they have to make happy, and that's goal number 1. And now you've added Netflix to the mix as well, and they're paying $150 million for an NFL game, so they're going to want something for that money.
It's amazing how much money.
2 NFL games, 150 each. Yeah. So
it's amazing, isn't it, Johnny Mack? $150 million a game. It's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are. And some rumors of week 13 against Baltimore. We'll see if that shakes out to be true. But yeah. A lot of stuff coming out. You're going to hear a lot of leaks. Some of them are correct, some of them are not. But when it gets all finished, it's like anybody else. Then you got to go out there and win the games.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. BMO in the chat, give me an update. How many likes do we got? I know we're up over 100, so we appreciate everybody being in here and liking the show and helping the show grow. Eagles fans are the best fans in football, so we do appreciate all of you. One more thing I wanted to say to Johnny Mack is, John, just looking, and I know obviously it's going off of last year, so it's not real. We'll see how each team plays, but it doesn't look like they have as many tough opponents this year. Last year, they had that crazy gauntlet. They had the Bills, the Chiefs, the Niners, the Cowboys, and they have the Bengals. They have the Ravens. They look tough. They have the Packers. I think they're tough, but overall, I don't think that the Eagles are playing as many really tough teams this year. At least that's how it looks to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
There's the difference. I mean, there's not nearly as much difference as there once was, but there's a difference from being in first place and second place. And yeah, I mean, instead of the 49ers again, you get the Rams, for instance. So
I'll take the Rams over the 49ers all day.
Instead of getting Detroit, you get the Packers. So that's the difference.
Yeah, so it's similar.
Yeah. 49ers are probably better than the Rams, but Lions are probably better than the Packers. So there's a slight advantage, probably.
Yeah, and I would, I think the Chiefs and the Bills are probably better than the Ravens and the Bengals too.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions. That's awful similar, though. I mean, the Bengals with Joe Burrow are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The Ravens are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs are, and the Bills are. So that's kind of pick your poison, I would say.
What was the scheduled leak? What was the leak on the Ravens? You said? I know it might not be true, but we'll see.
Week 13, 425. Yeah, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, don't take it to the bank. But if it's 13, I guess I like that. That's not.
To me, that depends on more what's around it too, as I said.
Yeah, and I mean by week 13, it's a whole new looking game. I mean, we'll see who's in.
Who knows who's playing?
Exactly.
But that's the thing. And the ironic part was the Eagles. You're talking about the difficulty of the schedules. The Eagles beat the Chiefs and they beat the Bills.
Yeah, exactly. I said that they were 2-0 versus those tough teams. Now they lost to the Niners. They got thumped by the 49ers, but we'll talk about that another time. Thanks everybody for checking in today. You guys boosted those likes up, so we appreciate it a bunch. That really does help the show grow. It helps the show reach more people on YouTube, which is obviously the goal of Birds 365. We want to reach as many Eagles fans as possible. So if you like the show and you're here, always watch it as long as you can. Always like the show, as it's the number one thing you can do to help our show reach more people, to help the platform grow, to help the show grow. So we appreciate all of you, James, Twiz, SMD Eagles, all the Jameses. There's like several of you, BMO, Paul Mancini, Ray Lester. We appreciate you all. We'll catch you tomorrow when we know the Eagles' schedule. We'll talk about it all tomorrow. We'll do
That's a win. That's a loss.
We're doing it, Johnny Mac. So start to prepare tonight when you see. We'll be doing it tomorrow, and we'll see what the win-loss final comes up for each of us. I'll give you one hint before we get out of here. I'm starting the Eagles at 0-1. I think they lose that game in Brazil to Green Bay. So there's an early tease tomorrow. The fans aren't going to like that tease on the way out. Hopefully they don't take the like back.
No, Netflix, by the way, just announced you can't spell Netflix without NFL.
There it is. I
Netflix
see
will
it.
be the home to watch 2 Christmas games. So official from Netflix.
It's a weird world we're going into. Teams paying $150 million to get a couple games. But all right, Johnny Mac, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll break down the schedule. We'll talk more about it, and hopefully we'll get our offensive segment in soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like on your way out. We'll catch you tomorrow on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.